Welcome to Cornell Keynotes. I am your host, Chris Wofford, and I'm joining you from eCornell Studios. Today we're going to look at the ways researchers and scientists are making food processing and food packaging more sustainable through research and development going on at Cornell's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences, which in turn supports healthier and more responsible food systems, ideally for everyone worldwide. Joining us today is Hanyu Chen, who is Clinical Assistant Professor at the Department of Food Science at Purdue University. Hanyu is also faculty author of the Food Processing Unit Operations Certificate Program from Cornell. And I should mention that Hanyu authored this online program as a postdoctoral researcher when she was back at CALS, or the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Hanyu, thanks for joining us today from Purdue University. Great to see you.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for the invite. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, and also joining us is Hanyu Chen, who is assistant professor at Cornell's Department of Food Science, again at the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. Professor Chen's work focuses on developing post-harvest technologies to improve food quality, enhance safety and sustainability for agricultural and horticultural products. Welcome, Chung. Great to have you on Keynotes today.
Thank you, Chris. Very excited.
Yeah, you bet. And thank you, Hanyu, for putting us all together for this one. I think we've got a good team. Both Professors Chen are all over this stuff. So listeners, a couple show notes before we kick off here. We will take your questions throughout, right, for Professors Chen in the chat, and heads up for links that are also going to be appearing in the chat as well to Cornell's online programs, the one I just mentioned, Professor Chen's certificate program, right? So heads up for that. Again, we'll take your questions as we go, so let's kick it off. Hanyu, I want to start with you. For us consumers, and myself included, right, or those in our audience who are working to aspire to get into the food industry, how does your work fit into the larger food production and processing and packaging landscape? Like, what are the particular problems that you're working to solve in your work?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Chris. So a little bit of my research introduction. So my research centers on developing and implementing sustainable food processing technologies and safety intervention technologies. Especially, I focus on non-thermal approaches that don't use heat as the main intervention method, such as, high pressure processing, as some of you might have heard of, ultraviolet light, or different drying techniques. So see how we can reduce energy usage, reduce waste production while still maintaining food safety and nutritional quality of our products. And beyond research, I'm also very passionate advocate about accessible and digital learning and education in the field of foods and health. So part of my work involves creating more accessible education for consumers, students, and professionals about modern food systems and management. So ultimately, my pivot is to solve two major problems for my work. First, balancing nutrition, safety, and sustainability. We want to protect consumers' health and reduce environmental impact and social impact without compromising the taste and convenience of modern food products. We also want to bridge knowledge gaps here. So in the very complicated modern food space, we want to improve public understanding of food processing and packaging and sustainability. And hopefully we can address some of these misconceptions and misguiding information and guide to better and more scientifically based decision-making process in the industry and at home.
That's lovely. Chung, I should mention that there's a little bit of overlap between you two. You've worked together, and have worked together in the past, but you specifically are working in the agricultural and horticultural space yourself. What are you working on at the moment? What are some of the problems that you aim to solve through your work?
Of course, Chris. As you introduced, my lab is in food science, but I do work with a lot with colleagues from other departments such as horticulture, plant science, entomology, plant pathology, and so on. So anything related to agriculture. So my lab is called a post-harvest technology lab, and we focus on so many different aspects of post-harvest. Now, currently, what we are really interested in are two aspects. One is processing. And the other one is the sensing. So for processing, not like Hanyu, who works on the non-thermal processing, we focus a lot on the thermal processing, which has been the major method for processing foods in the history. We're trying to develop some novel thermal processes, such as using infrared heating, microwave heating, and to combine that with vacuum and hot air for the creation of desired food structure and texture, also preserving food qualities and safety. And we also focus on the energy efficiency as well as the sustainability aspects of the food processes. Then in the second area, we are very excited about exploring the sensing side and how that could be used to improve the food production efficiency and food quality. Something we are very interested in right now include the hyperspectral imaging and also, for instance, fingerprinting. So my current appointment is a research and extension. So that means I do not teach directly courses to students, but I do communicate a lot with stakeholders, agricultural partners, and food processors. So try to disseminate the knowledge that we gain from research and from classroom to a real world practice.
Can I ask a little? Can I ask a follow-up question there? I'm curious about the sensing component a little bit. Specifically some of the imaging. What kind of things are we talking about? What are the applications for some of the imaging tech that you work with? Like, how does that work for us who are on the consumer side who need a little bit of clarity on that?
Right. So I'll give you a few examples. So a lot of the sensing and imaging, let's say imaging technologies, are used to classify and categorize different types of foods. So when you harvest apples, for example, you have apples that have some bruise, some are green, some are redder, and some has pathogens or some have some disease. So you want to separate them into different categories. Some may be used for like a table fruit for direct consumption. Some can be used for say processing juice or cider. Some maybe just are bad or rot that need to be disposed. So that's some examples of how sensing is useful. It's actually being used in the industry.
So are we talking about satellites, drones? Sorry, I want to dig into this because I find this kind of fascinating.
That is a great question. So satellite and drones are actually being used in agriculture. So I do have a colleague in my actually in my building who is integrating imaging, hyperspectral imaging into drones and vehicles so that they can go into or across the field to see which part of the field has more disease stress or have more insect damage compared to a healthy block. So that's some examples there.
Perfect. Good. Thank you for the elaboration there. Hanyu, I want to turn over to you. I want you to give us an idea of what the industry is doing, best practices actually, right, with food packaging, and more so, what kinds of things are top of mind for producers, right? So I'm thinking about cost, consumer appeal of packaging, buyer preferences, but ultimately sustainability. What's going on in those spaces?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, you're spot on. And, our primary intention of food packaging is all about protecting and preserving food products, effectively reduce contamination, and preserve food products throughout the distribution, processing, and storage lines. And right now, there are different pivots the industry is talking about and is moving towards. You're spot on about the cost and scalability. That's always a prime concern for food manufacturing and business. They always try to aim for keeping packaging more affordable while still producing at very large volumes and to feed the global population, right? Consumer appeal and convenience are definitely big factors. Packaging that are visually more appealing and easy to open, reseal, recycle is a big thing that actually has impacts to influence buyer's choice. And now we're also moving towards sustainability, right? Recyclability is a part of sustainability. Can we reduce plastic waste, explore different options in material choices such as biodegradable and compostable materials, but still keep in mind of the cost effectiveness and the feasibility of these products, right? And maybe we can talk, if we talk more, there's so many to talk about like, tailoring this to adopt to a circular economy mindset and how can we incorporate agriculture byproducts from animal production lines or from other agriculture practices to turn those byproducts into packaging. That's a very hot topic right now. And back to another factor influencing food packaging directions and research and innovation space is something that aligns with what Chan is doing is about sensing. So having smart features and maybe embed sensors and indicators into packaging is a brilliant idea and potentially could reduce waste. So for example, if we have temperature sensor to indicate real life temperature data of the product or the time of storage data of the product. So by giving this real-time freshness feedback, we can reduce waste. So I mean, it's definitely difficult to balance all these factors in one product, right? But we do see push from consumers, from regulatory agency, from the industry to all move towards a more eco-friendly and more integrated and more innovative solution in packaging.
Thank you. Quite the comprehensive view on some of the things that you work on. I really appreciate that. I want to get to our audience because I don't see any questions yet. I want our audience to chime in. There's certainly something that's got to be coming up for some of you. I have a million questions, but I'm gonna resist those for now. Chang, I want to switch gears a little bit because a principal component of our conversation, something that is fundamental to everything we're talking about here, is the food processing component. How do you and how should we all define processed food? What are we talking about here? Plants or animals?
That's a great question. So, by definition, processed foods are foods that have been altered from their natural state through various processes. So, this is a very broad and very general term. So, as you would imagine, a lot of things falls into this. In fact, most of the food that we eat today are processed food. It could be as easy as just washing or cutting. It could involve adding ingredients into it or adding packaging, as Hanyu mentioned. So I'll give you some examples, like yogurts, cheese, or hot dogs, or the salad you buy that is ready to eat. Those are all processed food. So it's actually a very broad term.
Can I ask you, sorry, Hanyu, did you have a follow-up? I apologize.
No.
Okay.
I think Charles summarized pretty well. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper. So how do we distinguish between what's called processed and ultra-processed food? You gave some examples there. Why distinguish between them? What are we talking about?
Right. So there's an ongoing debate, right? What is the ultra-processed food? And people hear about it. This is a new term and sounds very scary. You don't want anything to be ultra, right? So let's get back to the definition. So ultra-processed food are also processed food, but they're considered highly manufactured. And that means undergoing a lot of extensive processing, high temperature, high pressure, or involving adding ingredients into it. And these ingredients may include sugars or fat or salt, preservative, emulsifiers, flavors, or colors, right? So we want our food to taste better or to look better, right? Some of the examples of the ultra-processed food, some you will be find very astonishing because bread that we eat every day is considered as ultra-processed food, or breakfast cereals, or hot dogs, or sausage, or some of the instant soups, some drinks. So I think coming back to your question, Chris, distinguishing between the processed food and ultra-processed food, I have to say this is relatively hard because there isn't really a clear-cut line between these two. But instead, if you just want to differentiate the processed food, it's a little bit easier. You just need to go to the grocery store and look at the nutrition fact label. If you see more than 3-4 ingredients in it, it's probably just a processed food. But so I think there's still a going on debate, say which is good and which is not good, or say should we just rule this one out to just a moderate processed food, or it's considered ultra processed.
I want to jump on that. So Hanyu, I should ask you, are processed foods invariably unhealthy? I heard a little bit of, well, it was a little ambiguous in that, but I want your final word on this. Are processed foods actually invariably unhealthy? That's the conventional wisdom? Is it true?
Oh, I'm not sure if I can give a final word, but I can
Okay.
definitely give you my perspective from a food scientist perspective on this. So I agree with what Chan said, right? It's difficult to distinguish between processed and ultra-processed foods. And we often see ultra-processed food this as a definition in healthcare related articles and related research. So I would say one trick, like for me personally, as a consumer, I would say the primary intention of processed foods and ultra processed foods can sometimes be different. And that's one way of me distinguishing between them. So processed foods are invented, primarily to extend shelf life. So to preserve quality and reduce the risk of safety, that's the primary intention of food processing back to when that was invented, right? And ultra processed food, sometimes if you look at those sugary sodas, if you look at those snacks that have artificial flavors, you'll find out the intention of this type of ultra processed will differ. They already deviated from, just the fundamental safety and quality goals. They're trying to mimic something different. So I do think that's one way to distinguish between them, but it is very, very tricky. And unless you read the nutritional label, right? And back to your question, like, are processed foods unhealthy? I would say from a scientific perspective, not necessarily. Some processed foods, like what Chao mentioned, like frozen fruits and yogurts and vegetables, they retain a lot of the nutrients in them, and they can be incorporated into a very healthy diet and contribute to human health, right? And processing techniques like pasteurization or vitamin fortification, they help maintain food safety and add essential nutrients that people need in various products. So it has benefits to human health in that. But where it becomes problematic is with ultra-processed foods that is high in sugar, high in unhealthy fats, and high in salt addition or sodium addition that can potentially contribute to obesity or metabolic issues or other human health risks. So from my perspective, I definitely think a balanced approach is very key in this. How can we leverage processing to enhance safety and convenience without excessively adding detrimental ingredients to the consumer? So that's my approach. Yeah.
Perfect. I love it. Or rather, viewer Lisa is speaking my language. I'm curious about this question. Lisa asks, is there a push toward sustainability, such as biodegradable packaging, versus recyclable packaging, given that a lot of recyclable items end up not being recycled? What is Lisa getting at here? Either of you can take it. Go ahead, Hanyu.
Lisa, that's a great question. I think the industry is moving towards both direction. They're all at any given time, the research and innovation going on in the food industry is exploring different options, right? So you raise a very good point. So biodegradable packaging and recyclable packaging are not necessarily the same thing. And biodegradable, there are so many intricacies in it. Can we look at their biodegradable rates and under what condition, under certain environmental condition, under certain weather condition? So those are all questions that we need to answer as researcher. And you also have different materials that are derived from different ingredients. You could have seaweed or mycelium or other plant-derived materials that can be turned into and further processed into biodegradable or compostable packaging material, and they could have better sustainability claims compared to traditional plastic material. So it is a relative term here. But definitely there are research and innovation are exploring different options. And in the end, I think we all need to take a step back in a large scale manufacturing to think about the cost benefits here. Are these innovative materials, are they really scalable? Are they really financially feasible? Are they really cost effective? And will they actually have any impacts on the food, on the consumption of the food from the consumer perspective? So those are a lot of the answers that are currently being investigated. And yeah.
Hey, I want to ask you, I have a question from Jennifer, one of our listeners, who asks, what compromises are food producers making when transitioning to sustainable packaging? One would assume, and I think Jennifer does in this case, are there concerns with reduction in shelf life, right? Is this kind of the number one challenge in transitioning to sustainable packaging, or is it a cost thing plus that?
I think I can chime in for this one. What Hanyu mentioned is there are a lot of about polymers or biodegradable polymers that can be used or potentially be used for biodegradable packaging or more considered sustainable packaging material. So one thing, as you mentioned, Chris, the cost is definitely a big thing that's behind it for the transition, but also people need to consider, and there are a lot of ongoing research on this, is could the biopolymers or biodegradable packaging perform the same way as the traditional ones that we use? And the answer is not very certain. It really depends on what kind of materials we use. Like how you mentioned, there are natural substances used in seaweed or mycelium. I know that PepsiCo is very interested in the polyhydroxyalkanoate, which is very promising. It has been a lot of investment going on in this. And I believe if you go to the grocery store, you have seen those cellulose-based plastics or polylactic acid. But to some sort, they fulfill the packaging needs. But at the same time, just because they are biodegradable, they will degrade easily, more easily compared to the conventional thermoplastics. So where to use them, how to use them, these are still ongoing research questions that, like, say, researchers like Hanyu and I are trying to address in our research.
Chung, I want to stick with you. What does sustainability mean in the broader food supply chain? Can you kind of outline and explain some of that to us, how you think about it?
All right. Yeah, so I think this is a very good question. So sustainability is also a very general term. If we understand it from a narrower term, people like, well, it really depends on the disciplines or who you are speaking to. So for me, as a process engineer, I would think sustainability means reducing the energy use, right? Improve the energy efficiency, reduce the land use, the fresh water use, or just mitigate the emission of greenhouse gases. But in a broader term, I think for food systems, it could mean something different or be more inclusive. So that could also mean we can enhance the food shelf life so they last longer with their good quality. So then we don't have to worry too much about producing too much, and we don't have that much waste. So then that will also directly contribute to the sustainability that we just mentioned, those indicators. So I think this is a very general term, and I know that Hanyu also have some understanding from the social and financial impact perspective. So I'll hand it to Hanyu.
Yeah, thank you, Chan. So definitely, I mean, I came from a process and chemical engineering background, the same as Chan. So immediately I think of the same things, same concepts of Chan. But also, generally speaking, for me, sustainability is about how can we meet our current demands in the food system without compromising our future generations' ability to meet their demands. And their demands could be different than ours, right? Because we cannot predict the future. And so from the social and financial equity perspective, this is a perspective that not a lot of people talk about when we talk about sustainability, is we have such a complicated system of modern food production line, from agriculture practice to manufacturing practice to distribution and storage and to retail to consumers. So along this line, can we ensure fair wages and fair treatment of all stakeholders? And in food business, when we're producing new food products, can we actually help the local economic growth to our town, to our region? And can we actually also think about consumer affordability and accessibility of different healthy options of products. So I think as food industry professional, what is on my mind is I always want to think about how can we further improve food equity for rural and low income and different demographic of people, right? And reduce food insecurity and food deserts, which is a big problem in our society. And branching out to the environmental aspect too, there is this big concept of circularity approach in the holistic agriculture and food supply chain. So can we reuse some of the byproducts from agriculture and animal production, composting some of the organic waste and recycle packaging materials, for example? And in a broader agricultural term, sustainability also means improving soil health and conserving pollinators and reducing chemical inputs and carbon footprints from all aspects. So it's a very, very general term.
I think a lot of the circular industrial processes you've just described, I find really thought-provoking, and I certainly will want to learn more about that. And in some of the themes that you had described in your response there, also point to certain ways that food businesses think about actually marketing their sustainable practices themselves. It's a big part of it. We all see it all the time. How do you think about the marketing of sustainability? What do you look at? And this
I can take this question.
Yeah.
There are very interesting and very diverse strategies food companies are using to promote sustainability to consumers. As the most fundamental and the most basic ones, we see a lot of eco-friendly labels and certification stamps. So I'm sure you always see USDA organic stamps, fair trade stamps, and Rainforest Alliance stamps on various products, right? And then from a consumer perspective, when I buy a lot of the innovative products from startup food companies, I see a lot of them have these carbon neutral and net zero pledges to show their company's commitment to reduce emission, which is great. And some food companies even go a step further to show a very transparent supply chain system. They will use blockchain to actually demonstrate their product traceability, which is very, very awesome, right? And beyond that, you also have potential green packaging claims, like use of compostable materials and biodegradable options in their packaging. So these are all great strategies the food industry is doing. But I do want to make a note that from a consumer perspective, we also need to be cautious of this concept of greenwashing, right? So I'm not saying you will necessarily meet this issue, but this is a fact that sometimes exists and we will sometimes encounter it. And so greenwashing can occur if the claims are not actually backed up by verifiable data. So as a consumer, I feel like I should have the responsibility of seeking reputable certification and track the records and to verify the certifications are actually true for a product.
Hanyu, I want to stick with you for a moment. So can you highlight some great examples or best practices around sustainable packaging and processing tech? What are you most excited about these days?
Oh, that's a great question. So from my experience, I work with non-thermal processing and gentle thermal processing. So one example I can give you is a great example of moderate processing. So use very gentle, still thermal, but very gentle moderate microwave vacuum drying technology. We call it MVD technology. So this is a drying technology that uses low temperature and shorter times compared to your conventional drum drying. And so this way we can preserve the nutrients, preserve the structure of the product, and preserve and enhance the flavor of the dry products. And some of the non-thermal methods I have worked on include light-based treatments. Those are great for treating surfaces of foods like raw chicken surface and raw meat and bakery products as well. So ultraviolet light or pulse light, they can sanitize the surfaces and liquids with very minimum heat. And so we can save energy and preserve quality of the product. And both me and Chan are very familiar with high pressure processing. So you see high pressure processing or HPP products already commercially launched in the grocery store. One example is guacamole, packaged guacamole, and there are also cold pressed juices. So those are processed by HPP, which means destroy of pathogen, by applying high pressure rather than heat in pasteurization. So this way we can preserve the taste and nutrients.
That's great. Chung, I want to go over to you. What kind of sustainable innovations are you seeing? What are you most excited about on your side?
Yeah, definitely. How you mentioned about the processing, so I can give a few examples that I'm super excited about on the packaging side. So I think in the previous discussions we have covered a little bit on the biodegradable plastics that shows a lot of potentials, right? Definitely, as I mentioned before, there are ongoing research to say how do we make the bioplastic to work exactly same as the way that we want for a packaging that what we expect. But also there are other research. One of the example I like to share is called active packaging idea. So the means of active packaging comes from the purpose of packaging itself, right? So the packaging is used to avoid the intervention of abiotic or biotic stress. So, for example, microbial contamination, insect damage, and animal damage, and absorbing moisture or oxygen or light from the environment. So, active packaging work in an active way. That means it can protect the food actively. So, how do they do it? So, one of the examples is to infuse some natural bioactive compounds in the coating or the packaging materials, or adding a sachet or a pack containing the natural antioxidant as an scavenger or antimicrobials, antifungal, or antibacterial substances in the packaging. So to kill the emerging microorganisms or to just remove the oxygen in the packaging, so then the food stays longer. So in the case of the fresh produce, the freezing and the ethylene cause the maturity of the produce, right? So with this active packaging or packages in there, it can significantly improve the shelf life that the produce have. And the same thing for the meat products. Right, and of course, how you mentioned earlier about the sensing and the sensors that can be used for packaging. So I think this is very cool idea, and in fact, people have been using this and try to develop different things. For example, radio frequency labels that people can scan with their cell phone to show when the food was produced and then traced back to the production and to know how much longer shelf life they can still have. And there are also other researchers who are developing nanomaterial biosensors, which can change color or generate signals that can be captured easily to tell the status of the food that we have. So I think these are some of the examples that I think are very exciting in terms of packaging. And of course, how to more precisely use them, how to avoid over packaging is something that super related to the sustainability.
But I find it so fascinating, active packaging. Who knew? I have so much to learn in this space. We have something related, a question from Amna, who's one of our listeners here. Are there any concerns about harmful chemicals or particles leaching into food from sustainable packaging materials? And how do manufacturers ensure safety while maintaining eco-friendliness? So so kind of the opposite of what you described here. Sustainable components, ultimately harmful to the consumer. Do you think about that?
Yeah, that's actually a very valid, very good question. So, in the scientific research perspective, it's not only about having the barrier capacity or the killing capacity from the active packaging for microorganisms, but also a very important concept here that everyone will need to study is called the cytotoxicity. So it could be the toxicity to the food itself or toxicity to the human body, right? So there are a lot of studies in there that, people claim that they test this. Of course, if you are dealing with harsh chemicals or other things that may cause harm to the body, it definitely cannot be used. But this is, I would say now, a routine task for this kind of packaging.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Amna, for that question. I want to, we've alluded to some tech innovations in this space, and I kind of want to keep going with this. Are there some notable current trends or future directions where you see this going that get you especially excited about the tech involved? Chung, why don't we go with you to start up?
Sure. Yeah, I would say I would like to promote a new concept, maybe not so new, called precision processing. You have heard about this precision agriculture, precision manufacturing. So I think for the food space, we need precision. So that could involve process the food into the point that we really just need to avoid over processing or ultra processing that harm the quality or compromise the safety. And this could also involve in the reducing the energy use related to the food production and processing, reduce the material waste or product waste or environmental impacts. But this also means the same thing to food packaging. So avoid overusing of a package to the way that it's just the right amount than overdoing it. So sometimes overdoing it is even harmful for the food itself, right? And also, I will also say there is an ongoing trend everywhere about AI and machine learning. So you have seen this recent months and I have to say even days that development in AI and machine learning is everywhere. It has seen this large language model being used to address questions from people and talk to people, giving suggestions. And I think using the AI and machine learning in food industry is also needed. It's an ongoing trend. So how to use the AI to help us optimize the processes or optimize the material design. So those are exciting areas, which I think it represents the future of the food industry.
Hanyu, I want to talk about your commitment to education and what you'd like to see happening, or what you do see happening in this space, and where you think it is headed.
So I think education also has a big part in promoting sustainability overall. So adding to what Chang said about the future trends, we see a lot of discussion about personalized nutrition, about food literacy and nutritional literacy. And I think that ties into a lot with the consumer education. How can we use our knowledge so far with the data-driven approach in the lab and conceptually and with AI, like to align food choices with individual health needs and conduct maybe nutrigenomics studies and wearable tech studies and to reduce overconsumption and tailor different foods for different demands and for different demographics. So I think that has that can contribute a big push towards like reducing food waste and just to inform the future of food industry in general. And consumers definitely demand very clear labeling and better traceability of our products nowadays with the recent news from FDA about the red coloring, right? So I do think we still need a very comprehensive, very good solid education overall on consumers about sustainable practice, about modern food production, and to correct some of the misleading information and misguidance that consumers may receive from different channels nowadays. So that's a big push. And I do want to mention, I'm also very interested in another push that's towards regenerative agriculture and circularity of the agriculture and food supply chain, one concept I keep mentioning, right? So converting food and agricultural waste and harvest some of the high value ingredients, maybe into maybe from compost, maybe from animal feed, and can we actually incorporate it somehow in our food supply chain, whether it be part of the ingredients or part of the packaging, or just to educate consumers the utilization of different products. So can we form these closed loop systems from farming, from manufacturing, all the way to distribution and consumption. And I think that's true for all aspects of land and sea and air. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to see where that is going.
You know, you've given us a lot to think about, and you've also laid out some of the grand challenges that we face. What would you like, Chung? I think I'll switch gears to you. What would you like as consumers or food industry professionals, those aspiring to work in this space? What do you want us to do following today's conversation?
All right. I think at least for consumers, I believe everyone now have a better understanding of what is processed food, what is ultra processed food, and so don't be scary about hearing this word processing. It is not that scary. It does not equal to unhealthy. So I think it is more important to know how the food are produced and processed, and those are necessary steps in the food production, and that's actually improved the health and safety of our human race. And also in terms of sustainability, I think I like what Hanyu says, the big push, and it's actually when it comes to sustainability, this is a very high impact thing. So it's not just say one industry or one nation. This actually matters with the whole universe, the whole globe, that everyone is in this together. So I would like to see more sustainable production, more precise processing, and the use of better packaging in the food industry. And as researchers, of course, we are more than happy and we are willing to contribute to this and to have a more sustainable world.
Okay, Hanyu, your response to that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. As a food industry professional, if I'm wearing my scientist hat, so I think our goal is to create a more resilient, more fair, and more sustainable food system for everyone now and in the future. But if I'm switching my hat to consumer perspective, I'd say I would want everyone to, or as much as possible, right, to seek credible information and to understand not all processing is bad, as Chang said. Sustainable packaging and processing can be very, very powerful tool to reduce food waste and improve nutritional quality and reduce safety risk as well. So I think as consumers, it is our responsibility to ask questions, to read labels, and support companies to show genuine commitment to sustainability. So we do have this auditing responsibility as consumer, I think. And if possible, I do think we should look beyond just price and convenience. And remember, our individual choices in the grocery store, in the restaurant, actually do have an impact in the agricultural food supply chain. And as food industry professionals, our decisions, and as consumers, our decisions can potentially shape the farming and food manufacturing practices on the policy making level. So I do encourage consumers to think from a more scientific based perspective to make food choices.
Lots to think about, but it's time to dream big. So Chung, I think I'll ask you, what in your estimation does an ideal food industry look like? What do you want to see?
I want to say that we produce good food sustainably, and also we produce to the amount that we need, and then we save something for our next generations.
Hanyu, over to you. Your dream food industry. You've laid out a bunch. You've given us a direction to go in, but thinking big here. What do you want to see?
Ooh, so, I mean, we can all dream, but I think for me, an ideal situation is an industry where farmers, processors, packagers, and consumers all work together and collaborate in a very transparent and fair value supply chain. That's, I think, will be wonderful in a great dream of mine.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your commitment to this too, especially the educational component. A lot of several of our viewers and listeners today have asked for resources, and we're not getting it all done in today's conversation. Ideally, we're eliciting further action and behaviors in everyone that's watching this today. But I will tell you that Cornell's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences can probably answer a lot of questions that our audience has about education, resources, regulatory bodies, all those kinds of things. I highly recommend you check out Cornell's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. And while you're at it, check out Hanyu Chen's Food Processing Unit Operations Certificate Program. And we have a couple other online educational resources to share with you as well. This audience has been terrific, highly engaged. I appreciate everyone joining us today. Hanyu Chen, Chang Chen, lovely to have you on today's keynote. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you, Chris.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Stay